Welcome to Improving Client Engagement, a product of the Rhode Island State Innovation Model with funding from the United States Department of Health and Human Services, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid. This video training includes 3 modules developed to support direct work with clients impacted by behavioral health challenges. Upon completion of all 3 modules, participants can take an online quiz provided at the end of Module 3. Participants who score 70 or higher will receive a certificate of completion.
So understanding where a client falls on the stages of change is a really important first step in order to help understand and better assess their readiness for change and the interventions that are best designed and tailored to help them achieve their goals, wherever they may be. And so part of this work, what really came out of this work is what was called motivational interviewing, or MI for short. And motivational interviewing is really a client-centered, present, action-focused counseling strategy that really facilitates change talk and really, in a very subtle way, helps clients understand their readiness and their willingness to change and to help accelerate them through the stages of change, taking them from earlier, when they maybe weren't as motivated to make a behavior change, and accelerating through the stages of change to where, in fact, they initiate and work toward take action and ultimately achieve their goals.
Module 2. Motivational Interviewing, Strategies for Engaging Clients in Change. Learning Objectives. After completing Module 2, you'll be able to understand motivational interviewing as a tool for engaging clients in the change process. You'll be able to identify MI techniques and skills to guide your engagement with clients. And you'll be able to demonstrate an ability to practice O.A.R.S and F.R.A.M.E s as tools to support work with clients in the change process. Motivational Interviewing. Understanding the stages of change is an important first step in working with clients. You also need to know how to talk to clients as they move through the stages. Motivational interviewing provides strategies for talking about and planning for behavior change with clients. MI is a client-centered form of interviewing that uses brief, individual counseling techniques to help clients in the pre-contemplation and contemplation stages explore ambivalence, the pros and cons about behavior change. Motivational interviewing becomes an important resource for helping us structure the way we engage and the words we use to meet our clients where they are in their journey to change. Supporting a client's change process is about resolving the client's ambivalence or cycling through the various stages of change. Counselors who use MI demonstrate these traits by expressing empathy. That sounds really challenging. It must have been hard to go through that alone. By developing discrepancy. How are you managing your decision to continue to use alcohol and marijuana and doing your best at work? By avoiding argumentation. I hear you saying that getting high a few times a week isn't a problem for you, but at the same time you mentioned your mother is always arguing with you. Why do you think she feels that way? Rolling with resistance. It sounds like you do not want to stop using right now. What can we do to create a safety plan around your use? Supporting self-efficacy. You did a great job getting to your meetings this week. I know you can use those same skills to get to 4 weeks without using. MI, Goals of Intervention. The primary goal of MI is to help a person recognize that there's a problem and that treatment can help. The secondary goals of MI include inviting the client's significant others to express their concerns, provide information on unhealthy and unhelpful patterns of interaction, and promote the development of healthy interpersonal relationships and family systems. Clients can hold on to problem behaviors as a way to protect themselves from negative experiences and trauma. We begin to understand how important our role is. When the Transtheoretical model and motivational interviewing inform our work, we're prepared to support clients as they explore behavior change and improve their lives. Brief interventions. You might be asking yourself, how different can motivational interviewing be from more traditional styles of intervening? Traditional interview styles can feel confrontational, judgmental, and disempowering. This approach also fails to acknowledge the stages of change. Motivational interviewing respects the client as being in charge of creating change. It encourages us to meet the client who is not interested in a behavior change in the pre-contemplation stage, or those just thinking about a behavior change in the contemplation stage, where they are with support and education. These skills help set the stage for change through these strategies. Opening strategies, O.A.R.S. Motivational Interviewing's O.A.R.S. represents an interviewing interaction strategy. It's the start of the therapeutic relationship and continues throughout the process. O.A.R.S. reminds us that the client is the expert on their life, and that only through hearing the client's life story, through their words, can we truly understand where they are coming from. Open-ended questions. When we use O.A.R.S., we move away from closed questions that typically end with yes or no responses. For example, did you lose your job because of your drinking? This question really shuts the process down and has the potential to leave the client feeling guilty or shamed. O.A.R.S. uses open-ended questions to invite the client to share their story with their own words, and we can ask questions that allow them to educate us. For example, how did your drinking affect your job? With this question, you can now learn from the client what they perceive as the reason for not having a job. You can always follow up on the client's response for more information or clarification. Clients feel heard and listened to, and this experience provides a great start to the therapeutic relationship. A for affirmation. When we use affirmations in our interactions with clients, we send the message that even in the face of challenge, we see their potential for change. We can show affirmation in the words we use and even in our body language and gestures. For example, we might say, I think you did a good job going to the AA meeting on Wednesday when you were thinking about drinking. Or we might use body language by nodding to show that we're listening or leaning in to show support. It's very important that our affirmations are genuine and reflect the client's reality. R, reflect. When we use reflective listening, it lets the client know that we heard them and that we were invested in the therapeutic relationship. It's not always easy to remain in reflective mode, and we have to be careful to remain focused and invested in our work with clients. You can't make assumptions or assign your feelings when you reflect. Examples of reflective listening include repeating or rephrasing. For example, you could say, so going back to work after you were let go must have been difficult. Paraphrasing. It sounds like it was really hard going back to work after what happened last year. Reflection of feeling. It must have been difficult to return to the same job that you were let go from last year. S, summarize. We use summaries throughout our conversations because they're a form of reflective listening. Summaries are also useful for guiding us through transitions in conversations. Summarizing is a tool that promotes good communication between the client and you. For example, this is what I heard so far. Tell me, am I missing anything? You might use their response to explore connections to making change or planning.
Hi, I'm Norma, and I've worked for many years in community-based organizations with individuals who would like to make changes in either their eating behaviors or their smoking behaviors. Now, it's very important that individuals recognize what changes they want to make. And it's also very important that the person who's doing the interviewing, the motivational interviewer, also recognizes those changes and be able to act accordingly. We use a framework known as O.A.R.S. O for open-ended questioning, A for affirmation, R for reflective questioning, and S for summarizing. O, open-ended questions, you get more information when your questions are wide open. If they're closed questions, then they give you yes or no and nothing more. So we want plenty of information when we ask open-ended questions, and that's why we use O. A is for affirmation. An affirmation is complimenting that person. It doesn't take anything off the interviewer to say, nice job. I would have done it that way if I were you. You're doing a very nice job. And then R for reflective questioning. That is to say, you're asking the questions and you're mentally noting what the person is saying to you, and someplace down the road in your questioning, you spit out that information back to the person and you ask that person to confirm or say, no, you didn't say that. And at the end, you summarize. S is for summarizing. So you just wrap up all that that person has told you.
Assessing readiness for your agenda. As we begin to understand where a client is in their change process, we need to use the client's readiness to inform our engagement strategies. Not ready. As we begin to understand where a client is in their change process, we need to use the client's readiness to inform the intention behind the types of questions we ask and focus of our engagement. This information helps to inform our treatment agenda for each meeting. When a client is not ready to make changes, also known as the pre-contemplative stage of change, our role is to help raise doubts about the impact of the problem behavior and its impact in the client's life. This approach can help the client begin to consider the behavior from different perspectives and connect them to some of the adverse aspects of the behavior, which might move them along in the stages of change. Unsure. When a client is unsure about making changes, also known as the contemplative stage of change, our role is to tip the balance and provide education and support for the pro-change end of the client's argument. This approach can help the client consider the adverse aspects of the behavior and provide support for changing the behavior. When clients begin to see what change might do, it can motivate them to move along the stages of change. Ready for action. When a client is ready for action, also known as the preparation stage of change, our role is to assist the client in committing to a plan for change. This approach supports the client by co-creating a concrete plan to support them as they change the behavior. Across all three stages of readiness, it's our job to support the client and to meet them where they are in the stages of change. It's also during this process that we begin to use a skill set within motivational interviewing called F.R.A.M.E.S. Guidance for engagement, F.R.A.M.E.S. Within the Transtheoretical model and motivational interviewing, the concepts and skills build on each other. In our work with clients, we're called on to use a number of strategies to support, educate, and hopefully engage them in creating change for themselves. Another motivational interviewing skill that helps with this process is called F.R.A.M.E.S, an acronym for skills we use to guide client engagement. F stands for feedback. Ask the client to share their observations about what they have shared and what you are observing. Feedback should be individualized for each client. R stands for responsibility. We have already learned in our exploration of the Transtheoretical model and stages of change that no matter how hard we try, we cannot make the change for the client. We must stress that the responsibility for making change is 100% up to the client and no one else. A stands for advise. Ask the client if you can offer suggestions for their situation. Be sure to stick to the facts, be objective, and keep the advice neutral without judgment or shame if the client decides not to apply it. M stands for menu. One size does not fit all, and you need to be prepared to offer multiple suggestions or choices to support the client on their way to making change. E stands for empathy. You should remain connected to a client's emotional experience and how difficult it must be for them as they try to make changes. Having empathy can help you understand the challenges a client faces along the change process, what fears keep them from acknowledging a problem, or the feelings that they have once they begin the change process. Empathy is important to the therapeutic process and supports good boundaries in the therapeutic relationship. S stands for self-efficacy. It is your job to support the client as they consider making the change. You provide verbal support, resources, and evidence that the client possesses the ability to make that change, which builds the client's confidence in themselves. We use F.R.A.M.E.S to inform our engagement and intervention with clients as they work to identify and overcome challenges and behaviors that affect the quality of their lives.
I'm Kyle, and I have experience working in community health organizations who specialize in HIV and behavioral health interventions. So motivational interviewing, or as we commonly refer to as MI, is not only a good way to think and talk about change with people, but it also has utility across context. So you may use it frequently in a clinical setting, but I've also used the tools and the principles associated with MI in the context of supervisory meetings or relationships in that way. So it's a really effective communication tool and framework. And the added importance to using it with staff is that it helps model the way so they become more effective deploying those strategies with their own clients.
Module 2 exercise. This exercise builds on scenarios used in Module 1 and invites participants to apply skills learned from O.A.R.S, Assessing Readiness to Change, and F.R.A.M.E.S. Turn to pages 33 through 38 in your participant manual to complete the practice exercise. Answers to this exercise can be found on pages 43 through 55 in your participant manual. What you have learned. The word cloud captures all of the terms that we've learned in Module 2. Now that you've completed Module 2, you know how to use motivational interviewing to engage clients in the change process. Apply O.A.R.S, Readiness to Change, and F.R.A.M.E.S to support your work with clients. What's next? To learn about a treatment approach that helps clients confront challenges to creating behavior change, watch Module 3, Acceptance and Commitment Therapy. When you complete all 3 modules in the Improving Client Engagement series, you are eligible to take the online cumulative quiz. When you successfully pass the quiz with a score of 70 or higher, you will receive a certificate of completion from the Institute for Education in Healthcare. A link to the quiz is available at the end of Module 3.